That means it's probably all of them, right? I don't think they would make any stupid mistakes in how they split up their troops, given that they were better informed than us. No, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more inside, but most of the ones that are left are probably less powerful, so let us make a run for it. Those things are bad, really bad. There's been nowhere to run from the moment we were flanked. Even if we tried to fly away, they shoot us with their bows. We have to hold our ground. Beating them is the only way to survive. As Palpatra shouted, a voice came from above. It sounded somewhere between surprised and derisive. Well, that's one way to do it. We were rooting for you. Now please begin. With her voice as the trigger, the Nazaric Old Guarders charged. Yuri and the others repeated their encouragements with troubled expressions. The scene playing out before them was so unexpected, they couldn't conceal their surprise. Are they really this? Boy, they were doomed. I never guessed they would be so. Master Cocytus is also surprised. At this rate, it's going to end. Before they get to the good part, a hammer descended as they watched. This is bad. They were going to die. At Lupus Regina's quiet comment, a man took the hit to his chest and crumpled to the ground. The sound of metal screeching and something heavy falling echoed out clearly, even in the midst of the fierce fight. The first one to die was a human warrior. The Nazaric Old Guarder who clobbered him with a lightning-imbued hammer unsmilingly shifted its aim to its next prey. Mr. Priest, hurry up and heal, or your warrior going to die. Yuri seemed concerned. No. He died instantly, and now their line is broken, Shizu replied, shaking her head. The two Nazaric Old Guarders who had been facing the warrior were freed up. One of them headed toward the priest, and the other moved on to the rear guard. The priest already had two opponents. Now he would have to face another. He didn't have time to cast anymore. It was all he could do to withstand the attacks coming at him from three directions. The only one putting up a decent fight was Palpatra, but he was facing three of them, so he didn't have any leeway to go to the rescue. Thieves don't have enough attack power. Do you have any kind of ace move? The arcane caster protecting the thief had to fight another monster. That made two. A thief's light weapons were definitely not powerful enough against armor-clad undead. These undead couldn't be killed in one well-aimed strike. He could dodge nimbly, but the difference between exhaustible humans and inexhaustible undead was huge. They were looking at us like they were going to start crying. Should we wave? Sure, we can do that, MUUCH. KK, Lupus Regina grinned and waved at Palpatra. He got hit. Because you distracted him, Lupu. You mean it's my fault? Yes, it's your fault. But we can root for them. Hang in there, yeah? We need them to hang in there. Everyone nodded at Yuri's remark. In their battle with Palpatra's worker team, the Nazaric Old Guarders kept the pressure on the entire time. The workers' resistance was so futile, the game so one-sided, that Yuri and the other maids began to pity them. They laughed at first. Why were they so confident before the battle started? But the fight was not even worth watching. They yawned and even started encouraging the workers. It's so one-sided I don't even know what to say. Do they have any ace moves? Maybe it was the summoning spell he just cast. Tier 3? No, that's too weak to be an ace move. But I think their idea to build a wall with summoned monsters was good, for sure. If the attacks hadn't reached, they might have been able to regroup. But flying was a bad move. The wrinkly one even said so. Wasn't clear if he was trying to run away or cast magic from above. Perfect for target practice. The arcane caster had already taken a critical hit and fallen to the ground. If his hands had been free, he could have cast a healing spell or used a potion and returned to the fight, but he didn't have the energy. In the end, the thief covered him. He had his hands full trying not to get finished off. I wonder why they underestimated the Old Guarders so badly. That was a question. Maybe they just thought things would go their way. Not because they were stupid, but to distract themselves from despair and rouse their courage. Maybe their survival instincts as human beings had maxed themselves out. Either way, it looks pretty hopeless. Yeah, things are going downhill. If they had a chance, I guess it would be to focus on defense and buy time until the other burglars returned. Everyone's chilling gazes pierced in Toma. You don't think they were actually going to come back, do you? It's obvious they want it's impossible. No one can get out of the great tomb of Nazaric alive. An agonized scream along with the sound of something collapsing. The combat maids looked in the direction the sound had come from and voiced their disappointment. There goes the thief. That then. Maybe we should have given in when they begged for their lives, but they were so sure they would win. Anyone would think they had some kind of trick up their sleeves. The thick scent of fresh blood, the thief must have spattered, reached the maids. Smells good, leave them, Yuri said reprovingly. They'd been ordered by their master to gather up all the incapacitated, whether dead or alive. There was no way they could be so rude as to present him with bodies that had bites taken out of them. Fresh meatill, asked Lord Aints later, so please control yourselves for now. Isn't this kind of bad though? Weren't we supposed to be testing if the minions could deal with escapees? I think so. That's why there are such strong undead waiting near the walls. Master Cocytus seems to have taken the scenario in which they are caught too easily into account. That they would challenge the old guarders head-on was a surprise. That's what happens when you don't analyze your opponent's strength. Okay, anyone who is breathing even a little, heal them and send them to the torture chamber. The dead ones let us report to Lord Aints. Thus, that night, the worker team led by Palpatra disappeared. Push them back. Gringham's shout echoed in the burial chamber, filled with the stench of mold and death. The room was 20 yards square. The ceiling was high, probably 16 feet. The place was overflowing with figures. A caster had created magic light, and a torch lay fallen on the floor. Gringham and his team, Heavy Masher, had been driven into a corner. The rest of the burial chamber was crawling with zombies and skeletons. They were a mob of low-tier undead. There were so many it was absurd to try to count them. Gringham and a warrior with a shield took the muddy torrent of death head-on. They created a bank so it wouldn't reach the rear guard. Zombie fists pelted Gringham's full-plate armor. As corpses, they were more powerful than regular humans, but they couldn't damage the steel armor. Their rotting, fragile hands smashed against it, leaving behind foul-smelling scraps of decomposing meat. The skeletons were the same. Their rusty swords weren't going to pierce the enchanted armor. Coincidences were conceivable, but thanks to the magic defense they cast, none occurred. Gringham swept his axe through the area in front of him. As soon as one undead fell, another stepped up to take its place. They kept closing in, all but crushing the workers. Damn it, there are too many of them. The warrior with the shield next to Gringham let his distress slip. The shield was big enough to cover his entire body, so no attacks were connecting, but its entire surface was slick with foul liquids. He was bashing in the heads of zombies and skeletons with his mace, but even so he was losing to the pressure, slowly retreating. Where did they all come from? The warrior's question was a natural one. After parting with the other teams at an intersection, they had searched a number of rooms. Unfortunately, they hadn't discovered as much treasure as had been in the smaller mausoleums. Still, they found a decent sum, and they had continued steadily making their way, bit by bit, through other rooms. Then they entered this one, and when they began investigating, the door suddenly flew open. So many undead flooded in that no one could guess where they come from. Zombies and skeletons, weren't such terrifying foes? But with these numbers, they could do a great deal of damage. If the workers got pulled down and buried, even if they didn't die, they wouldn't be able to move. Then the undead would descend on the rear guard. Not that Gringham thought they would fall so easily, but against the threat of these numbers, he was a bit worried. At this rate, it's sheer luck that our line is holding. Having made that observation, Gringham unleashed a power he'd been saving. Let us finish them all at once. I am counting on you. The rear guard, who until now had just been throwing rocks, leaped into action. Really, for Gringham and the other members of Heavy Masher, undead like these weren't so tough. That's why the rear guard had been on standby, saving their energy as much as possible. Once those reinforcements were in action, mopping up these undead would be a cinch. Our god, god of earth, cast out the impure ones. Clenching his sigil, the priest's shout became his strength. Something refreshing entered the atmosphere. It was like a pure breeze had blown through the burial chamber to sweep away its foul air, a stronger than normal wave of holy energy. It was the priest's exorcism ability. At the same time, beginning with the ones nearest the priest, the undead crumbled and turned to ashes. If there was an overwhelmingly large ability gap, undead could be destroyed instead of merely exorcised. But destroying a large number of undead was quite a bit more difficult and required more energy. In the end, 20 were annihilated at once. Fireball. An arcane caster launched a fireball. It exploded right in the center of the undead mob. Flames blazed for only a split second. The zombies and skeletons in range collapsed, their false life burned up. I am not done yet. Fireball, our god, god of earth, cast out the impure ones. Additional area of effect attacks decimated the undead. Let us go right. The warrior abandoned his shield and brandished his mace with both hands. He accompanied Gringham into the mob. They charged in, even though the casters could have made short work of the undead. They preferred saving the magical energy. The priest's exorcism had a limited number of uses, especially his specialization in anti-undead moves made him an essential asset in this tomb. Gringham leaped into a group of zombies and swung his axe. A liquid less like blood and more like glop oozed from the stumps of severed body parts. If their hearts had been beating, it would have sprayed. A nauseating smell wafted out of the cuts, but it wasn't tea more than he could stomach. Or rather, his nose just couldn't even distinguish it any longer. He worked with the warrior to attack, attack, and attack. Defense didn't even cross their minds. They were able to make such a reckless offensive because they had magic support and tough armor. They were also up against weak undead. Now and then Gringham felt the shock of a zombie punch to his head, but his helmet absorbed it. The burden on his neck was almost non-existent. His chest and abdomen may have been getting punched as well, but he didn't really feel it. After all, their opponents were undead of the lowest tier. The number of them had made things tense. Now that the cleanup had progressed to some degree, they began to feel more comfortable. Without pausing his swings, the warrior shouted, "We've only encountered small fries, but this tomb sure has a lot of them. That in itself means there could be a stronger one somewhere," said the priest. "That said, if there is one, I don't get why it doesn't come out." He had picked up the warrior's shield and was watching the progress of the battle from behind them. These undead might have been summoned somehow, like with ritual magic or an item. Strangely, the undead vanished after a set amount of time. There were so many of them that there was nowhere to stand. The wizard had warned the team because he noticed their disappearance was vaguely similar to the way summoned undead expired. A way to summon a huge number of low-tier undead. No, sir, do not make me imagine this entire tomb crammed full of zombies. Gringham answered as he sliced off the head of a skeleton like he was cutting a branch off a tree. Then he flicked his eyes around the room. He could count the number of undead on 2 hands. The door was still open, but no new monsters were coming in. A little more fighting and this battle would be over. Just as he thought that, he was assailed by a creeping sensation that started at his feet. His ability to sense danger was ordering him to get out of there, but that was next to impossible under the circumstances. Still, watch out. Leave the room. The thief must have sensed the same thing. But it was too late. The hard, sturdy floor abruptly morphed into something that couldn't be relied on. Instead, the workers felt like they were floating. A beat later, they lost their balance and smashed into the floor. Gringham could hear his teammates groaning in pain. He had managed to keep hold of his axe despite the fall and destroyed the skeletons on the floor as he got to his feet. Annihilate them. The undead had taken damage in the fall, especially the skeletons, who were weak against impact damage, so they were easier to kill than before. After finishing them off, Gringham finally took a look around the room. They must have dropped to the bottom of a magical pitfall where the floor of the room simply vanished. When he looked up, the ceiling was far away. He guessed it was almost 40 feet high. A closed door was about 10 feet up. Another 10 feet up, a total of 20 feet was the open door. That was the one they'd come through originally. He thought they had probably fallen 2 stories. Overall, the room's construction could best be described as a tall, 4-sided pillar. The floor sloped steeply downward, like an inverted square pyramid. If they weren't careful, they would slide down to the lowest point in the center of the room. Actually, one of his teammates had tumbled to the center in their original fall. He was in danger of being buried under the zombies that tumbled down after them. Gringham couldn't believe they had plunged into such a place virtually unharmed. The strange thing was that 10 feet up, at the height of the closed door, there were 16 passages. 4 were on each wall of the room. It seems like a water torture chamber. It gushed out of those passageways, or slime that would be even worse. I totally agree. Let us hurry up and investigate that door. If it is safe, let us escape through it. It would naturally be difficult to scale 2 stories of a wall that had no handholds. The thief was probably the only one who could do it. For those in full plate armor like Gringham, it would be nearly impossible. The unknown lower door made them anxious, but it would be easier to reach. As they discussed how to climb up, things poked their heads out of the 16 passageways, all at about the same time. There were corpses so swollen they looked like they were about to burst plague bombers. Plague bombers bulged with hoarded negative energy. They resembled chunks of meat and were exasperating undead. They exploded when attacked, dealing damage to the living and healing undead. They jumped. Crashing into the floor, their bodies made a sickening sound, but the problem was what happened next. The rotund monsters falling onto the steep slope rolled down like boulders toward Gringham and his team. Look out, dodge them. You don't need to tell me twice I am the brains of this team. They all, including the whimpering wizard, just barely managed to evade the monsters. The monsters continued rolling down to the center of the inverted square pyramid. When the next plague bombers peeked their horrible faces out of the passages, Gringham realized that these had been just the first wave. He got an idea of what was in store for them. Run, these things are going to bury us. If they were hit by one of the plague bombers and tumbled to the center, they were sure to be crushed. If that didn't kill them, repeated hits of negative energy from the bursting monsters their teammates were fighting would. What a treacherous trap. Someone give me a boost. Don't be ridiculous. We wouldn't be able to dodge if we did that. Even if they managed to evade the falling monster, their balance would be off, so they wouldn't be able to dodge the next attack. Asking someone to be a foothold under those circumstances was too much. Then I'll use magic. Don't fly, you are not strong enough to carry us all up there. No, not Arg, watch out, that web ladder, that could work. Aim for the closer door. Gringham, cover him. No, stop. We'll escape through the door 2 stories up, the one we came in through. The lower one is too dangerous. They didn't have time to ask what gave him that idea, but they trusted him. Web ladder. The spell created a spiderweb that led straight to the door 2 stories up. The magic spiderweb's adhesion was stronger than normal. It was sticky when one wanted to be fixed to the web, and released when one wanted to move again. The spell really could be used just like a ladder. With rushed but flawless movements, Gringham and his team climbed up the web one after the other. They looked like prayer beads on a string. When they finally reached the open door, Gringham cautiously looked inside. Getting shoved from there and falling all the way down would have been unbearable. He sighed in relief. They seemed to have escaped the scenario he'd been afraid of. There were no undead in sight. Having confirmed that, he scrambled into the hallway and began hauling the others up. We were saved. Getting crushed to death by undead has got to be up there among the worst possible ways to die. These ruins are built in a pretty nasty way. I hurt my leg a bit in the fall. Can you heal me? I thought I felt my toes tingling in the explosions of negative energy. That was terrifying. I was lucky I even managed to dodge. Don't make your wizard dodge. Everyone grumbled, breathing raggedly. Hey Gringham, why did we avoid that door? I kinda thought it might actually be the right way. It would be logical to make the correct route dangerous, right? It's just a hunch, but try attacking it with a weapon we don't need. Gringham gave a raw answer, having run out of poise. The thief immediately threw a dagger. Just as it hit, or would have, part of the door swelled up to form a tentacle and slapped it away. It's a door imitator. No, judging from the color of the appendage, an undead door imitator. They capture opponents in a sticky liquid and go to town on them with their tentacles. Plan B trap, huh? How tricky, nice job seeing through it. It was only intuition. No, honestly, all I did was choose the known over the unknown. That spot was getting bathed in the negative energy bursts. I don't think it affects non-living things like doors so much, but I mainly doubted whether it really made sense to put a hallway there. Okay, should we go? Gringham abruptly closed his mouth. The thief, who had been so chatty up until a minute ago, put a finger to his lips and was focusing his ears. Gringham strained his own ears and noticed the regular sound of something hitting the floor. Everyone looked in the direction the noise was coming from down the hall. An enemy, I guess. I wish they'd give us time to rest. Yeah, if they're S1 sound, and whatever S making it isn't even trying to move stealthily, it must be an enemy. I'll be glad if this is the end of them. All of them quietly drew their weapons. The warrior took his shield back and stood at the front, protecting one side of his body. The wizard had his glowing staff pointed down the hall, ready to cast at any moment. The priest raised his sigil, and the thief took aim with his bow. The tapping sound grew louder. Finally, the thing making it came into view. A gorgeous yet worn robe was wrapped around a figure thinner than a young girl. The noise must have been the gnarled staff the figure held in one hand. The thing had a face, a bit of skin stretched over bone, beginning to rot, that contained a dark wisdom. The negative energy its body gave off hung around it mist-like. It was an undead caster. The wizard, first to identify the monster, cried out. It was called an elder lich. Yes, it was the worst sort of monster. It appeared when negative life occupied the corpse of an evil caster. The moment they heard it was an elder lich, Gringham and his teammates changed formation.